I view courage as like in my head when I see the word courage, I see someone physically stepping out, because I feel as though in the moments that I feel that I've had to be courageous, you subconsciously feel as though you're taking an active step, right? And to do that, I just feel like it's very vulnerable.
Hello and welcome to the Go Encourage podcast, where I talk to real people about real life, trying to gain some insight into their experiences building courage. In today's episode, I'm joined by Emma Krebs, who would describe herself as a very curious person who has a passion for podcasting. All right, so with that said, let's get this episode started. Hello, Emma. Welcome to the Go Encourage podcast. Really pleased you're able to join me today.
Thank you. I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get straight in. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. So I normally ask people what their name means. Do you know what Emma means?
I remember I did learn it in school, but I can't remember. Do I want to say the origin's like German? Okay.
I did some research.
I know you would have. And I don't know what it means, so I'm very curious.
Okay. We want to hold that word curious for later on.
Okay.
As well. So I found two meanings for the name. The German meaning is entire or universal.
Okay.
Which I thought was quite interesting.
Uh-huh.
Entire or universal. And then I went back and saw some other meanings, and one of the meanings in Hebrew, and we're going back to biblical times, is my God has answered.
Interesting.
That's powerful.
That is, yeah.
Considering how curious you are, your name actually means answer. That's pretty cool.
Well, I have a funny tidbit on that. I was not planned, and people often giggle at that, but my dad actually had a vasectomy. Like, I was not planned, but my mom really wanted to have a third child, and my dad just said it wasn't possible. And one day my mom was pregnant all of a sudden. So she always says, I willed you out. And so my mom would probably find that entertaining, that I was the answer from God, right? She asked God all the time for a third child. So interesting.
There you go. You got to share that with her. Absolutely.
I will. That's great.
What's your mom's name?
My mom's name's Lorraine.
Hey, Lorraine.
Oh, she'll definitely listen.
Here's your answer.
Perfect.
All right, excellent. So where are you originally from? What's your hometown?
Mm-hmm. So I'm originally from Canada. My hometown is called Calgary in the province of Alberta. Should I share where I currently live as well?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm living in the northeast of England, actually, at the moment, near the Sunderland, in kind of the County Durham area. I'm just in a little small town up here, which has been interesting.
I had somebody called Sophia Chowdhury who was on the podcast. I think it was episode 3, and she's originally from Sunderland as well. So
okay.
A little connection. Go.
Wonderful.
All right. So can you share a little bit about your family dynamics, how you grew up, siblings, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned before, I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and there is quite a large age gap between myself and my 2 older siblings. So that resulted in me having possibly 4 parents, is what I often say. But it did kind of show me insight into adulthood, I feel like, a bit sooner, which has actually been really helpful. Say, as I was like navigating high school and things like that, I noticed a lot of my peers would get caught up in where we were at in regards to high school, and I need to figure this test out and things like that. Whereas after witnessing my siblings who were out of school and navigating real life as an adult, I was able to see that maybe minor things in high school don't matter as much once we are out of that space. So yeah, I grew up in that family. We are very close, myself and all of my family. My parents did divorce I was at age 12, which, as I've entered my adult years and entered romantic relationships, I've noticed the impact that definitely had on me, considering how much I admired my parents' relationship. So to see that come to an end was really jarring, to be completely honest. So yeah, as a kid, I often say I didn't have many friends. I went to a small school for the first 10 years of my life. There was only about 50 kids in my year, and I had my one really close friend who I still connect with now, but I often kept to myself. Um, yeah, and then I went to a
Did
high
you
school.
sorry,
Yeah.
did you prefer it that way? Was that like an active choice that you made, or was it just the way it kind of panned out?
It wasn't an active choice, no. It was just kind of the way things had panned out. I had my one friend, but she became a professional ballerina. So when we were children,
Oh wow.
she was very busy all the time. So that meant I would just spend a lot of time by myself. And I didn't live in neighborhoods with a lot of children around. So with the older siblings that were often out of the house, I found myself just hanging out by myself. But with that said, although it wasn't a choice, I think it really did help to really build the foundation of the relationship I have with myself now, which
Mm.
is very important. And I think plays the biggest role within my life for sure.
Couple of follow-up questions.
hmm
How what's the age gap between you and your next sibling up?
So my brother's in the middle, and he's 6 years older than me. And then
Okay.
I have a sister, and she's 10 years older than me. So there's 4 years between them two.
Okay.
hmm
And interesting you brought up divorce from your perspective.
hmm
I have someone coming on next week actually, and they're talking about divorce from the adult perspective. You mentioned there it was it was a difficult time for you. Do you remember what was going on within you when that was happening?
I think for the first few years, it was just a lot of shock that it had happened to my family. Because I can wholeheartedly say my parents had such a beautiful relationship. And throughout my life, I was aware that my parents had something different than other parents did, if that makes sense. Like my parents were friends, they loved each other, they cared for each other after having such a long-term relationship. And people other couples would honestly come to my parents quite often for like insight and advice. So to see that happen amongst my parents was really jarring, but at the same
Mm.
time I think it also takes courage to separate from a partnership that might not be serving you anymore, right? We also see a lot of people staying together just for the kids, quote unquote, which I also don't know if that's the healthiest thing if you're for anyone in the situation, right? So
Mhm.
yeah.
I read a quote recently because I was on the mindset that you just stay together no matter what,
Mm.
doesn't matter how tough it gets.
hmm
Um, and one of the main driving factors you brought it up there is for the kids, right?
Yeah.
And then I came across something. It was like a moment, and it said a lot of people stay together for the kids because they want to model love to the children, but actually by staying together in a toxic relationship, the kind of love that you're modeling can actually harm them in the future,
Mm.
uh, which changed my perspective on that because we have these kind of norms or values in society that might not align with each person's situation, and you've got to make those judgment calls yourself and work through them with courage, like you beautifully put there.
hmm It also shows like the independence of the individual, right? I saw both of my parents really stand on their own 2 feet, which
Mhm.
community is important. And I think I've gone hyper independent at times, but it did show that you can kind of rebuild after a bit of disruption within your life, right? So yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
absolutely. All right, thank you for sharing that.
Mm.
So, as a young girl, was there something that you envisioned yourself moving towards in terms of ambition, career, that kind of thing?
I find this question interesting. Because if you were to really pull it back, I could make up like, oh, when I was a kid, I always thought I would be like an actress when I was
Mhm.
very young, but that never really stuck. You know, a lot of kids have like a dream, and it's quite visceral. It remains throughout their childhood. For me, it would ebb and flow. And um,
Mhm.
sorry, my dog. We're
That's
okay.
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 I can't hear him.
Okay. Perfect. Um, and then as I kind of grew out of that, once I was like even just like 10, 11, I really never felt like I had a clear path. A lot of my friends knew what they were going to do once they left school and they went to post secondary if they decided to do so, or what kind of career they were pursuing. Whereas myself, I never had something that was of interest to me, or something that really stuck. And I actually think that's quite interesting in regards to where I am now. Because if you really pull back the layers, what I'm doing now did not exist when I was a child. And I genuinely do think that is kind of part of why, when I thought about my future, I couldn't picture it, because a lot of these mediums and roles didn't even exist at that time.
Mm.
So yeah, it still is, but especially once I left school, it was a really confusing, but I think more exciting kind of season of my life of like, okay, what is adulthood going to bring for me as I leave and transition?
Okay. And then when we're talking about those mediums and those things that weren't available then, what is it that you actually
Mhm.
moved into? What do you do now?
Yeah, so I have started to build my career in podcasting. I just usually use that generic term because at the moment, I kind of describe my career as like I'm making my own schooling, if this makes sense. So I've been in the industry for working in it for like 3 years now, I want to say. And I often just say I'm in a season right now where I'm just trying to gain as much exposure as I can to the industry. So the roles that I do vary from working on like awards that are related to podcasting to editing shows, producing shows, marketing shows. And so I'm just kind of, because it is such a new industry, there isn't as formal avenues. And so I'm just kind of making up my own blueprint as I go along.
Love it. Love it. Carving a
Mhm.
path.
Yeah, definitely.
And so when you talk about awards, can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah. So I've recently met Naomi, who is the creator of the International Women's Podcast Awards. And
Mhm.
so I've only started working with her a few months ago. But what I've noticed, and please let me know if I'm going way too many different directions.
No, it's
Um,
cool.
but the main thing I've noticed as I've kind of gone on my career of podcasting is the impact of relationships and the power of relationships. And as much as I try to learn about like the technical skills or maybe just like industry insights and so many different things, I do really lean on relationships. One, because they come so naturally and organically to me. It's definitely one of my strengths, and it's also like
Mhm.
lights me up. But I feel as though every experience and opportunity I've had within my career, but I could honestly say within my life as well, has stemmed from um, relationships, right?
Mm.
People you meet, the connections you make, often lead to new and um, experiences that really help to like shape me and give me experience as well. I don't know if that made
Mm.
sense. I hope it did.
It makes sense. I can resonate with
Okay.
that because I
Okay.
think there's like yourself, and I think we've talked about this before. I just have a very curious mind. I'm
Mhm.
really interested in how people do life, how people, you know, stay productive, what courage looks like to them, all sorts of
Mhm.
stuff, relationships and everything. And I think when we as humans get to a place where we can be authentic and just um, connect human to human, I think it just lights me up as well. But I think it lights many people up. I think, you know, the world works on community.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes we think of that community as maybe a church group or a, you know, I don't know, a dance group or whatever. Like, and those, whilst those things are good, I think the beauty of a one-to-one connection is really powerful.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all right. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but just before we do, I thought it'd be really fun to do some quick questions, just so people can kind of get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
So here's some fast ones for you.
Okay.
What's your favorite food, Emma?
I gotta say pizza.
Pizza? Any particular topping that you like?
Honestly, like just pepperoni or just cheese. I'm very vanilla.
Okay. Does pineapple go on pizza?
I'm open to it. You do you. I'll eat it maybe.
Yeah, it can divide people, that one.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not as visceral as other people.
okay. iPhone or Android?
I'm an iPhone, Mac, all the things. Yeah.
That's okay. That's what
Yeah.
I knew. I liked you for a reason.
Yeah.
Sorry, going back to pizza really quickly. Have you ever been to Italy?
I haven't. I really want to go though.
Okay, if you're a
Yeah.
pizza lover, oh my,
I
it's
can't.
just.
I can't imagine. I
I was
was
like, it can't be that good, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so
really.
good.
Was it like life changing?
It was like you can just walk down to see these beautiful places. I went to Rome, and it was like beautiful, and then there's all these places you can just pop in and grab a slice of like salmon and feta, or you know, like all these like really different flavors, and oh, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's on my list. It's on my list.
I recommend Rome. You can
Okay.
walk around it; it's phenomenal. Anyway, preferred clothing choice. What's your go-to?
Like a hoodie. I'm
Hoodie,
shocked I'm
yeah.
not in a hoodie today. Yeah.
It's really cold in the studio today. It was -2, earlier on, and I got the temperature up. Is it cold where you are?
We got snow today, which
You got
is,
snow.
I mean, as a Canadian, I wouldn't call this snow, but in regards to this climate, it's snow for them. So yeah.
So I'm wearing a hoodie, but it's just wrapping my legs up.
Oh yes, I have a heater under my desk, so I get it. I get it.
Nice. Favorite place? What's your favorite place?
I'm gonna say now, Australia has always had like a really big impact on me, so I'm gonna say Australia for now.
Anywhere in particular you've been?
I lived there, so I was around a lot of different places. But Sydney, like Coogee Beach, like that area will definitely have a spot in my heart.
I haven't quite made it out there, but I plan to go soon.
Highly recommend.
The only thing that scares me is people go out to Australia and then they don't come back for like a year.
It's true. I'm trying to go back. I'm trying to get back there.
In fact, the last Emma that I had on the podcast, she was from Australia. I'm trying to think where she was from. I want to say Manly Beach.
No way. Manly's amazing. Like in Sydney.
Yeah. I'm not so good with my geography, but it's out there.
No,
somewhere.
that's very specific as well that you've remembered that. That's great. Manly's amazing.
Name, unless I'm wrong, unless it was the Gold Coast, I don't know, but it was out there.
Okay.
But I'll take that. I'll take the compliment. Star sign.
I'm a Libra.
Libra. Also, do you feel like you're very balanced?
No, I think I am the opposite of. I go from one extreme to another, and also very indecisive. And my partner's also a Libra. His birthday's the day after me, and so for us to make a decision as a couple is not the best sometimes.
It's tricky. Is one on one scale and the other one on the other?
And we always have counter to the other person's counters, and well, did you think about this? Well, yada yada yada. So. Yeah.
It's tricky, isn't it, when you play devil's advocate all the time?
Yes.
Because then you see both sides, don't you?
Yes.
Libras. Cats or dogs? I know you have a dog, so I
have a dog. Yeah, I don't mind cats. I had a cat growing up, so I'm going to say dogs now.
What kind of dog do you have?
She's a Bedlington Whippet. We've only had her for a few months. Never thought I'd have a Bedlington Whippet, but I do now.
I'm going to pretend like I know what that is.
She looks like a Whippet. Do you know what a Whippet is?
No.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't say that I might get wronged for saying this, but I wouldn't say they're the cutest dogs. I think she's so cute, but they're like skinny and yeah.
Okay. I'm a German Shepherd kind of guy.
Way different than a Whippet.
Okay, fair enough. What was the last movie you watched?
Oh, I forgot. I saw that question and I genuinely struggled. I'll say, can I just say the last one I saw in theaters? Because I honestly can't remember. I saw Avatar. This was ages ago. I don't go to the cinema often. And it was
the first one?
No, the most recent one that came out. Yeah. Okay. I honestly thoroughly enjoyed it.
Was it good? Okay, I never got around to it. Yeah. Okay, cool. TV show that you're into or a book that you're reading at the moment? One or the other?
One of my I love books. I genuinely love books. I just finished The Richest Man in Babylon, which was a great book. It's a fiction book with like a really... Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it.
Okay,
I haven't read it. But I've heard it.
That was great. I'm trying to read more fiction. I always am. But my go-to show is Seinfeld as well.
Oh, Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I can't get into fiction. I try, but I'm more into like self-help, personal development, all that kind of stuff. But there you go.
But there's
go on.
I want to counter that. I feel as though if you can get a good fiction, something like maybe like The Alchemist or something like that, I find sometimes those are more valuable than the nonfiction ones because I'm just in awe that these people are able to write a creative story, but then still implement that layer of depth to it that you know what I mean, or that deeper message that you might just straight up get in a nonfiction book, whereas they can kind of intertwine it and really take you on the journey, which I think is cool.
I think the last nonfiction one I had a try with was called The Shack. I don't know if you've heard of The Shack.
Oh, I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah, and I think the first like part of it is he loses his daughter. She gets like kidnapped, and I was like, "This is too much. I can't."
Yeah. Do they impact you quite a lot? Books.
I think so. I think it can be quite impressionable when reading because I think books are so powerful. Like you're using your imagination to picture things and stuff like that. And as a dad, I was like, "Yeah, there's too much."
Yeah,
I was like, "No, I can't do it." All right, are you spiritual? Do you believe in God or a higher power? Do you think there's more than this material world?
I am definitely spiritual, and I definitely believe that there is. I don't follow a specific religion. I grew up like in a religious environment, although I don't identify with it. And I believe in like the universe, and I do believe that there is something beyond this human life, and I do believe that it kind of extends beyond just this moment as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Okay, thank you for sharing. You can sort of unpack the next ones a little bit more if you want, or we
Okay.
can go straight through them. So,
Okay.
introvert or extrovert?
Oh, I identify as an ambivert.
Ambivert. Okay, I'll take that.
I still am constantly trying to figure out what really does fill me up. But on like a Myers-Briggs test, you know how they break it into percentages. I honestly was like 49% introverted and 51% introverted. Although I'm not gonna dictate my life on a personality
Sure.
test, but I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
feel like it's very representative of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And it goes into the Libra vibe as well, which kind of
Oh
works.
yeah, true. Very true.
Love languages. Have you done the love language test?
Yes, I have. Mine is words of affirmation is my top one, and quality time as well.
Quality time.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Okay.
which is
If you don't
tricky
mind me,
sometimes.
which is tricky, did you say?
Tricky as I have a lot of long distance friendships and relationships, especially with my family. And then as someone that works from their computer, like digitally, the last thing I want to do sometimes is hop on a FaceTime with my family, but I want to spend that quality time with them. So um, I'm trying to find new unique ways to do that. So if anyone has
Mm.
any tips, let me know.
I'm just glad that technology is where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like, I have some really, really good friends in different countries. And so when we do catch up, it might not be for like a month or two, but it'll be like 2-hour-long phone calls. And you feel like you've spent that time with them,
Yeah.
video calls and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite the same as being in the same space, but it's better than nothing.
Totally. I completely agree.
Have you heard of, I think Meta's doing this thing where you can kind of be in the set, you put a headset on and sound, and you can like, it virtually puts you in the same room as them, and you can kind of
Yeah.
interact with things like that. It looks kind of scarily
Interesting.
cool.
It's interesting and it's fascinating because on one hand, I always struggle with that, or like the AI and things like that. I don't know much about all of it. And I think at the end of the day, I really would be like, okay, we can move, like we should move forward with it. We need to grow and adapt. But I definitely am apprehensive of like, oh my gosh.
Mm. It's
Yeah.
interesting because if humans are in charge of it, sorry humans, but like we know what humanity can look like when it's not so what's the word, good intentioned,
Mm-hmm.
which is tricky. But then on the flip side, if you let AI do its own thing, then you equally might get to a place where AI says, hey, these humans, they cause too many problems, let's get rid of them.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
So
that would be very justifiable. I think
it's
they have enough
logical, right?
evidence. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, are you a make things happen kind of person, or do you normally kind of go with the flow?
Again, I don't mean to keep being like, oh, sorry, in the gray. But on one hand, I definitely have probably the most pivotal elements of my life are things that I have actively cultivated myself. In regards to like my relationship, my partnership, it's honestly one of the things I'm like proudest of. That came from me sitting down and actively thinking about what I wanted in a partner and pursuing that, right? Or my career, you could say, like I definitely have made it happen. This hasn't been something that I've necessarily fallen into. But at the same time, I do think that I do believe in like a higher power energy. And I do think that there are parts of our path and our journey that are really out of our control at the end of the day. And there's beauty to that, right? The letting
Yeah.
go, and the embracing, because it's often more beautiful than something that we could dream maybe in this present moment, right? So yeah, it's listening to your intuition and trying to figure out in those crossroad situations of, do I need to keep pushing forward? Do I need to actively pursue this goal or dream that I have, or is this kind of the universe stepping in and I just need to let go and ride this wave, right? It's tricky, I think, especially in your 20s as well, when you don't have that much life experience behind you, for sure.
I mean, I'm a little bit older than you, and I can assure you it doesn't get any easier.
Oh no.
In terms of trying to determine what to let go of and what to hold on to,
Mm-hmm.
and then doing that dance of trying to make that work. And I think you said something that's really beautiful, is that trusting your intuition, trusting your instincts as well. And I think, it can be pushed on us not to trust that. And that feelings are feelings and logic's logic, and you have to balance them out. But actually, I think there's this sense that we all have when something is good, or if something is like bad. Even if you haven't gotten a reason for it, you just know intrinsically, okay, this is not good,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't follow through with that. And it goes back to what you were saying when you were younger. Um, allowing yourself to love yourself,
Mm-hmm.
allowing to build that foundation of like knowing who you are. And it's phenomenal the amount of people. I know we're in different generations. I can speak for my generation that we're a bit of a rebellious generation, the Gen X crew. And although we push boundaries, there's still this sense of we need to check in with our boomer parents to make sure we're on the right path. Whereas I think, as the generations have progressed, that has been sort of detached from a little bit more and more. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have that. I think there needs to be a balance, but it's really interesting to talk to people from different generations and see what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. My parents were definitely very supportive in regards to me, like leaning on myself and really going down my own paths. Like they really encouraged. I would tell them the crazy things I wanted to do, and they would just be like, okay, if that's genuinely what you wanted to do, like go for it. And I think if they had maybe countered it or questioned it, obviously within reason, that would have maybe, again, in those, especially like your early 20s, when you don't have that life experience to justify and to use as logical evidence against your intuition, which is more of like a feeling and an intangible thing, right? It would have probably impacted the decisions I made, which wouldn't have led me to where I am now, right? So yeah, very
Totally.
grateful for that.
Good. All right. Everyone loves a good compliment. What's a good compliment that's been said about you that was meaningful?
I had someone one time tell me, they I don't know if it was necessarily a direct comment. They just were describing me, and they said, "You're talking about my innate curiosity," is what they used, and I have since pinched that. So, if the person could only see me now, they would think that's hilarious. But anyways, I am innately curious. I think it wasn't until that person had said that to me that I realized how strong my curiosity is, and that was before. That was years ago. So yeah.
That's good. And when you say you've used that, how do you mean?
So in regards to like myself, I feel like curiosity is kind of like my shtick. But at the same time, like I started a podcast in January of 2020, and it's called The Curious One. Often we were talking about like introductions earlier. I often describe myself as an innately curious person. Briefly, I don't know if I had made sense earlier, but years ago when I was like 19, I think it was, I went down this path with like minimalism and things like that, and still an element of my life I still value. And there was these gentlemen called the minimalists, and they would often talk about how they used to have these really big job titles and how they used to describe themselves in that way. And now they don't do that anymore. They describe themselves with the things they're interested in, the things they're passionate about. And so as I've gone along my journey, I don't really have a formal job title, but at the same time, it's not necessarily something I want to identify with, right? And so when I am describing myself or introducing myself, as cheesy as it might be, I usually just say I'm an innately curious person. But I also just feel like it's a very accurate representation of who I am. So, yeah.
What's the handle for your podcast if people were looking you up?
Yeah. So it's called The Curious One. It's been on a small hiatus at the moment. But I really do feel as though of everything that I've created and done in my life thus far, it's probably the strongest representative of who I am. I imagine you feel the same. Making a podcast, although it's great for the listeners and the guests, I think it is such a tool for self-development. And creative expression and so many things. And if anything, I think everyone should start a podcast just for their own personal journey, to be completely honest.
Yeah, totally. I get asked often as well, like, how do you direct your podcast? How do you get your guests to say what you want them to say? How does it all line up? And I was like, I don't. I throw some questions at you, like I'll give you them beforehand, maybe in your case, last night. But sometimes people get them a couple of days before. And for me, I'm just genuinely curious. I just want to know.
Yep.
Like, I don't care if I don't agree with you or we have different worldviews or whatever. I'm like, oh, I'm just really interested to see how people live their lives. And I guess for me, courage is like at the base of that because I
Hmm.
think it's probably the virtue that underlines all virtues. So yeah, I can relate to what you're saying there. I think there's this sense of, okay, how does that work?
Hmm.
So, if people even bring up conspiracy theories and all sorts, and even if they're wild,
Yep.
and I'm like, there's no way I buy into that. But I'm like, I'm really curious on how did you get to that thought? Why that? And what's that look like? And I think when you go in with that sort of mindset, I want to quote a famous philosopher, but I think I'm going to quote the wrong one. So maybe I shouldn't. But if you wisdom starts where you realize that you know nothing, like,
Mm,
and then you're always in this learning state, this teachable state, which I don't know, helps keep me grounded anyway.
yeah. I I think that's also too why I connected with what you're doing, and I love what you're up to, and wanting to be on the show is one, I can tell it's genuine, and I can tell you are just curious, but I do feel like we have very similar approaches. And um my podcast had originally started from, I would often describe it as, it's a platform for me to broaden my perspective. And so it was the same. I wanted to learn from people that had completely, entirely different life experience than I did. And I loved, if it continues to go on the show, I love talking with people that live on the cusps of society and are just
Mm,
doing things that are very unconventional in any way possible, whether it's their beliefs, their thoughts, or their literal day to day life. And it's the same. Like I didn't necessarily always agree with things, and sometimes I had one time it got me into a bit of trouble for, anyways, there is also that balance of like, you also have to realize, and sorry, this is like really in like the trenches of it, but
no, I love it.
sometimes I came into an issue of, is this a message that I want to echo into the world, right? If it was damaging other people and things like that. But I do think that my naivety, or like my genuineness and curiosity, kind of got me in that situation. And so it was the universe kind of being like, okay, like, yes, you can be open and really see the best in people, but you do also have to be mindful that some people can take advantage of that. But that, again, that was like small in the weeds, one minor
Sure.
incident. Yeah.
I get that. I had a similar conversation with someone who said to me, be careful who you put on your podcast because you don't want to put things out there that are. And he came from a more of a religious background, so he was more like, you're aligning yourself with things that are, you know, not good. Let's use
Yeah.
that term.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's not what the podcast is about. It's not about me. Elevating anyone or debating in a way that I want to pull people down.
Hmm.
It's curiosity, and I really believe the truth shall set you free. So it's good to just talk to real people about real life, and see what they're doing and share. And I think that speaks for itself, because um, I think we're a little bit sick. Well, I don't want to speak for the whole of humanity who listens to podcasts, but we're a little bit tired of like experts telling us how to think, what to feel, what to do, all that kind of stuff. And I think the expression for each person is so different in the way that they interpret things, and I think it's beautiful to see things from a different dynamic, from a different perspective. And going into the sort of spiritual dynamic of that, I do believe that we're all connected. I think we have a sense of connection to, whether you want to call it a spiritual world, you want to call it religious, whatever. But there is something within us all that is innately good. And so, trying to see what people do with that and what kind of decisions they make is, I think it's a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
But I can totally see where you're coming from. If someone came on and had an agenda or something like that, that could be a little bit tricky.
I can I add two other points to
Yeah, sure.
what you said. One of the many reasons I love the medium of podcasting is because it is a longer form medium, and you're able to unpack more complex and more layered ideas, right? And I think with the world we're in now, everything's shorter form, and things could be misunderstood, or people might not have the opportunity to explain their perspective or why they feel certain ways, etc. So I feel as though one podcasting exposes us to that. At the same time, I loved podcasts before I started creating my own show. And one of the main reasons why was because it helped to broaden my perspective by exposing me to thoughts and individuals that I didn't have the opportunity to meet in my day-to-day life, right? I didn't have many friends for a really long time in my life. And so it was almost like my hypothetical friends and hearing their insights. But at the same time, I also feel that podcasting has been a medium that has showed me how to have difficult conversations, whether you're having insights into really vulnerable conversations amongst people where there is conflict and there is disagreement. It's been really fascinating to be like, wow, they can disagree on this core belief or value, but at the same time have a civil, respectful conversation and maybe even maintain a relationship as well, right? Sitting in that kind of, like we said, we might not agree. They might have beliefs that are completely different than ours, but I agree. I think we're all connected at the end of the day, and it's not a reason to write off or completely dismiss someone at the end of the day, right? We're human. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It kind of fits into the next question really well. What's a common misunderstanding that people might have about you?
My first response when you said this is maybe it's because I'm from Canada, like North America, and I've noticed since living in the UK, how do I articulate this? I think a lot of times people might misunderstand my genuine interest and enthusiasm is probably the right word, as I think people view it as flirting in my day-to-day life. So say I'm like out at the shops or something and I'm just asking someone about their day. I'm using this, if I use a better example is, so I met my partner in Australia and we lived on a farm for 4 months, and it was a very hostile environment. It was a really crazy experience. And in it, when he first saw me at the farm, just how I would go about my day and interact with like the 100 other people that lived there, he thought that I was flirting with other people. And then I think once he got to know me more, he just realized that is my personality. So that might be one thing. I just think my enthusiasm is something that people might misunderstand. I hope I articulated that correct. Like, when I listen back, I hope I'm like, okay.
I you know what, I can totally relate to that. I think if you have a genuine desire to connect with someone, and you're interested in them, and you're like, I'm quite complimentary with my language. I won't get into the psychology of why, but like I just am, and I think that could be taken as and I'm like, no, I'm not searching for anything more than
you don't have an ulterior motive or anything. Yeah, you just want to connect, like you genuinely do. Yeah,
and then I think when the pushback is a little bit like, hey buddy, I'm not interested, I'm like, whoa, nor am I, mate.
Yeah. And I always say I'm like that to literally everyone, right? It's not selective. It's yeah.
Okay, that was good. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, this one's I'm really interested in this. Establishing routines and mindset practices. They can be a key part of productivity, getting things done, but not just productivity, but just feeling that sense of worth within yourself as well. Do you have a specific routine or a rhythm that you kind of follow to move forward in life? So that could be daily, that could be like something that you do annually, whatever. I'm really interested.
I'm in an interesting season. So I would say since I think it was 19, so I'm 26 now. And genuinely until this year, I was trying a new morning routine, a new system, a new workflow, all of the things. I was honestly like, morning routine videos on YouTube were my favorite things. If I could have like Tim Ferriss share his like daily routine, I was all over it. And I feel like I've tried a lot of different things, and I feel as though
you tried Miracle Morning?
I haven't. No, that's not the 5 a.m. club. That's different, right? Miracle Morning is different.
Slightly different.
What is it? Can I ask?
Yeah, of course. So Miracle Morning is by a guy called Hal Elrod. It was recommended to me so many times. I pushed it off for years, and then I finally did it, and it's incredible. It's like 6 things that you do in the morning to set you up for the day. Each of the things are 10 minutes each. I can quickly tell you what they are. So the first one is to sit in silence for 10 minutes. So if you're religious, great time to pray. If you're into breath work, if you're into meditation, great time to do that. And the idea of that is just to kind of be in yourself before you do anything else, before you give to the day. So there's an acronym is SAVERS. I've talked about this a lot, right? So if you're listening Mr. Hal Elrod. I'm plugging you hard.
Yep.
But it is from testimony, to be fair. So that's the S, and then the A stands for affirmations. So it's about speaking things and reprogramming your mind, and kind of speaking that over yourself basically as you go through the morning. And then the V stands for visualizations, getting a vision board, aligning yourself with your vision. E stands for exercise. It's the one I least like out of the lot, but always happy afterwards.
Yep.
So there's getting you inside of your body and making sure things are flowing, etc., etc. And then the next one is R, which is reading. So 10 minutes to read something, something obviously that's going to help you. I don't think the news is a great one to use in those 10 minutes. And then the last one is scribing. So the idea is to journal and get out from here right in front of you and see what's going on internally. So it's 10 minutes. It's supposed to be the first thing you do in the morning for 10 minutes. And then the challenge is to do it for 30 days. So actually, Going Courage started when I did the Miracle Morning, and I did like a video for each day. I look at them back and I cringe because it was during COVID and
That's
stuff
great,
like that.
though.
And it was great. It was great.
I
It got
think
me
it's
over.
good you cringe because it shows that you've grown, right?
Yeah. I think for me it was more about getting over myself. Like being on this side of the camera is not natural. Well, was not natural because I was always on the other side of the camera as a photographer. And so for me, I would do some of these videos without combing my hair, without like really getting dressed and all that kind of stuff. And by the 15th video, I was like, yeah, I don't care what people think. It's fine. Like it's more of my own insecurity, right?
Yeah.
So that was really helpful. But that's essentially the Miracle Morning. And I was a bit like, and then once I did it, I was like, this is going to be a part of my life now. And the beautiful thing is, once you've done it, you can tap in and out of it whenever you need to.
Right.
Some people do like a minute a day because they just can't squeeze it in, but it's really powerful. And there's like a Facebook group. Once you can join a community and stuff like that. Anyway, I've talked a lot about that, but tell me more about your productivity.
Yeah. So yeah, I just feel like I've tried different things, whether I'm like waking up and doing like a cold dip, or like going on a walk straight away, or like reading and things like that. At the moment, in the past month, I've just completely let everything go, if I'm completely honest. And like I said, it was I think I was too obsessed with if say something had happened the night before, maybe like with a friend or a family, and I wouldn't I was so regimented of like, I can't look at my phone for the first hour, which is something I honestly still do. And so I think it's kind of just like, also too, if I didn't do my meditation, if I didn't read, and if I didn't do my stretches or whatever it was in my structure at that time, I would just think that I was going to have the worst day. And so it's almost like this like exposure to forcing myself to show up without doing the meditation, without doing the exercise, yada, 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 and just seeing how I perform in these situations has been really interesting. But with that being said, I think it is just a temporary thing of me just letting go of that kind of grasp of my routine, because within the past however many years, 7 years it's been that I've been playing around with this stuff, there are elements that always maintain and always come back, which is reading in the morning. I love reading, and I always start my day with a book. My dad kind of implemented that in my life, and that was what books have been. Although I love podcasting, it's been the thing that's completely changed my life the most. And meditation is something as well that I often tap back into. Usually not as much breath work. It's actually something I do more like in a group setting and not as regularly because it's quite intense for me. And then exercise is an element as well that I played sports growing up, and so it's something that those three things are things that even if I tried to run from them, they're just always going to come back up into my life, and probably play the biggest impact in my life. So yeah.
So cool. All right, I like that, and I really like the point that you made about it becoming too obsessive. Because that's the danger, isn't it? Because then no longer is it serving you. You are then shackled by whatever it is that you think, and it's like religion and faith.
Mm-hmm.
I think the two are very different. I think religion is a system that keeps you within it, whereas faith is more open-minded. It's more curious. It's more like, okay, I believe this, and therefore I'm going to see what happens. So it's very similar to this. Like if you say, hey, if I don't go for my run in the morning, and there's a million different reasons why it's legitimate you didn't go for a run in the morning, but then you've already set yourself up in your brain like, this is not going to be a good day.
Yeah.
And then you kind of prophesy that over for the rest of your day, and it just kind of has a negative effect.
I found myself even like avoiding situations. So say if I hadn't meditated that morning and I needed to have what also too, maybe because I didn't meditate, I viewed it as a bigger, scarier thing, right? But say I needed to have a conversation that like maybe took a bit more courage, right? I wouldn't feel like I could do it because I didn't meditate today, and I'm not going to show up in the best way, right? So yeah, like you said, you using the word shackle, that is exactly how it felt. And so again, I'm a Libra, so now I'm going to go to the other extreme of be like, okay, all right, routine, I'm going to let you go. And but as I said, those three things: the meditation, the reading, and the exercise. Those are things that I just feel I could never run from, though.
All right, so I wanted to ask you the big question, and that is, what does courage mean to Emma?
Um, when I think of courage, the main thing I think of is vulnerability. To be completely honest, I feel as though being courageous, and I view courage as like in my head when I see the word courage, I see someone physically stepping out, because I feel as though in the moments that I feel that I've had to be courageous, you subconsciously feel as though you're taking an active step, right?
Mm.
And to do that, I just feel like it's very vulnerable.
Mm.
Um, yeah, is that a long
That's
enough
good.
answer?
That's good. I mean, we'll
Unpack
explore a
it
little bit
further.
more,
Yes.
but no, I really like that. I think when all is said and done, you could read the right books, get the right advice, you could have your cheerleaders behind you, you could have everything set up, but actually taking that step and moving forward, it does expose you, right?
Yeah.
You are exposed, and whether that might be on a stage, metaphorically speaking and literally speaking as well, but now you are in the thing that you visualized, or you're in the thing that you decided, and it can feel really scary, whether that's going into a new job, whether that's carving a way out for your own career path in terms of podcasting or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You're suddenly like, okay, I'm in the arena now, I'm not a spectator anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in the locker room anymore, I'm actually out here on the field.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So when you stepped out, and it sounds like you've had a few. I can pick out a few things from our conversation. I'm sure there's thousands more, but from stepping out, just geographically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
from Canada,
Mm-hmm.
did you come to the UK straight after that, or did you go to Australia? Or was it
My first time I moved out, we moved to Australia.
okay? So
Yeah.
from the step from Canada to Australia, what was going through your mind? What did you think?
I will say at that time it was just excitement, and I think a huge reason why was again just the naivete. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. One of being so young, but also two, just like never leaving the bubble, right? I do remember though, like I was the move to Australia. I was in Australia for 2 years, and that was I had prepared for that more so than other moves that I've done. I also moved to Los Angeles for a little bit, and then I have moved to the UK now, right? And both of those moves were quite sudden. Um, Whereas the one to Australia was a bit more planned out. I will say
Okay.
I do remember I was really excited, really excited, really excited, and then it wasn't until I landed in Australia. And I remember I got to my hostel and I put my bag down and I looked around, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Like literally, what have I done? I don't know a single person. There is like a massive backpacking culture in Australia, and it's literally humorous knowing, like now as I reflect, that I didn't even know that. Like I didn't realize there was other people doing the same thing that I had done until I got there. Like just the little amount that I knew. And so I just remember being like calling my mom and like, Mom, I need to come home. What was I thinking? Like literally within the first hour of being there. And she was like, just go back, like have a nap. And yeah, that was courage. If to be honest, like yeah, I would say like that was kind of what went through my head. Yeah.
If you don't mind me
Yeah,
just
yeah.
jumping in there, what's really interesting about that is you've got there, you're
Mhm.
like, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah.
Right. But then there's another step of courage now to go, okay, I'm going to follow through with my decision.
Mhm.
I'm going to listen to mom, I'm going to have a nap, or I'm
Yeah.
going to, what's the word? Climatize myself
Yeah.
to the conditions that I'm in, and I'm going to give it a go.
Mhm.
What was it that then after that made you think, okay, yeah, I can do this?
I think it was so. And okay, so I want to say there's another part of like that a huge part that I've learned about travel, like from traveling, and that is the element of just like going up, like being in a country where you don't know anyone and you just walking up to a group of people and being like, hi, I'm Emma. You know what I mean? I just feel as though it seems really minor, but when in life do we have many times that we have to do that, especially like willingly and not like a work networking event or something like that. And so when I think of courage, I think of vulnerability, but I also think of like actually taking action and actually just doing the thing and just sitting in the uncomfort. Right before I moved to Australia, I remember, and it's funny that this is a book that comes to mind when it's something I've only read once, whereas a lot of books that have had an impact on my life, I've like reread and reread. But my dad gave me the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways, and I just think that title, that quote, is just perfect. Of really just sitting in that uncomfort, right? It's the getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And to me, that is what courage is I think so many times, myself included, we talk about doing the thing, we plan about doing the thing, we read about doing the thing, you know what I mean? We listen to the podcast, we talk to people about doing it, but it's really just courage is doing the thing, right? So if it's traveling, it's being like, okay, I'm here now. Like, what do I got to do? Okay, I need to get a phone. I need to open a bank account. How do I do that? Well, I need to go ask that person over there because I have no idea what I'm doing. So I need to go over to that person. And that seems like really minor now and like juvenile. But at the time, like it really impacted my life in regards to now I genuinely have no issue meeting people and
Mm,
asking and speaking up and like moving to a new country. And again, these were all English speaking countries. So we also got to preface that. But
mm,
say a networking event or something like that, I have no problem going up to a massive group of people and introducing myself, right?
mm.
And that's a skill that's been really helpful in my journey. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that we got to that level of detail as well, because those are the things that all of us experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're having a podcast, when we're talking to someone in the coffee shop, whatever, and we're explaining, oh, I did this and I did that, it's kind of, they're just headlines, aren't they? But
Mm-hmm.
actually, when you're walking through it and you're going, there's a group of people over there. I don't know what they're going to think of me, but I need to talk to them because I don't know where the bus station is and
Yeah.
they're going to be able to help me. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, the heavy breathing, the going up there, for the first few times. Uh, these are important parts of life. These are like moments that a lot of us remember.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is this, and I use the stage analogy because I can't think of anything bigger, but you know, getting up on stage to give a talk, like that's at one level, right? That's on this side of the spectrum. But all those little things are the day-to-day things that I think drive us to step out of our comfort zone, and therefore they also not therefore they result in us having more faith in ourselves to go, you know what, I did that so I could do this, and then that builds bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What was you don't have to tell me the reason, but
Mm-hmm.
what was the thinking behind going to Los Angeles and then the UK?
So I had started my podcast in January of 2020, and then I'll try and keep this concise, this story. I'd mentioned prior the minimalists. I had watched a documentary, I think it was in like January of 2018, 2017, maybe. And it just really changed my perspective and I really aligned with it. Realized they had a podcast, and that was the first podcast that I ever listened to. Again, I resonated with them, their journey, and a lot of the guests they would bring on. And it inspired me to create my own podcast. So started my own podcast, really inspired by the Minimalist podcast. And then in August of 2021, I got the opportunity to intern on the show. So that resulted in, it was like a few month process. Like we had challenges, they would call them, and like there was an application process and things, and I got one of the applications. And so within a matter of 2 weeks I found out I got the role and I needed to move to Los Angeles. So at that time I
Wow.
had an apartment like with a lease and a full-time job and friends and family.
A proper adulting now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I said, I'd done the Australia thing and then I moved back to Canada because my visa ran out. And I had been living in Canada for a while, right? That was coming out of COVID. It was still a bit iffy. But I was pretty settled. But I mean, I never wanted to like proper settle down, especially then. So I said yes, and I just went all in, sold everything I owned, and went back to just having a suitcase. And I moved to Los Angeles. So yeah, I stayed there for 5 months, I think it was. But as a Canadian, getting a American visa, like a US visa, is very difficult. So I couldn't get it. I couldn't stay for longer. So I worked with them remotely until January of this year, which was a really cool experience for me, like really full circle moment. So coming off the back of me having to move back to Canada, I just moved back and I just felt so defeated, to be honest. Like I had this whole big thing. I moved to Los Angeles, and I realized quickly, like, because we went down in Avenue when I was in LA, and we realized, okay, actually, like this visa thing's going to be a lot harder because the move was so quick. We didn't process the whole visa thing. There was a moment where I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to stop forcing a square into a circle and just let this go, right? Like the whole we create our life, and you said, or do we let things flow? It was like I had created the opportunity, like I had prepared for it, right? So that when the day came, like I was ready for that opportunity, but at the same time, it just wasn't for me at that time. So I moved back to Canada and I was there for a while, and my partner is originally from the UK. So his visa was ending to Canada. And so long story short, when you have a partner from a different country, to live in the same country for a long amount of time is a bit tricky. So
It's a bit tricky.
yeah, there's a work visa for the UK. And so now we moved back to his hometown here for temporarily.
Okay. Oh, so you don't know what the future holds. You don't know where you'll be.
No. No. He's applying for residency to Canada. But
Okay.
I have tried to be able to work freelance. Like for 5 years, I've been trying to get to this point, and I'm here now. So I'm not in a rush.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool. Well, on behalf of the UK, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you can think of in terms of particular experiences where you really felt you had to step out in courage?
Yeah, to be honest, like as we were talking about this, I'm like, yeah, like, okay, I moved to these different countries and things like that. But, and maybe this is my own just like ego. I'm just like, okay, these aren't like courageous things. Like, people have been through some things, but also too, at the same time, when I think of courage and moments where it was way more, and maybe it's just because they're more recent, but way more of like a visceral experience, and they genuinely seemed like, oh my God, not my life's gonna end, but just this, it required a lot more courage, is in kind of, you mentioned there, the day-to-day things, right? And one of those moments I think of one of my friends, one of my closest friends, her name's Celine. I met her through my podcast.
Celine.
Yeah, shout out. I met her through my podcast, actually. She's someone that's just had the biggest impact on my life. And we were in a women's circle, for example, a few years ago. And that space, that container really, in such a short amount of time, really impacted me. And just thinking of the difficult conversations that we had in that group, the amount of courage that it took to, one, show up, because to be seen at that level is so vulnerable. Again, something that I think goes with courage. But we had a experience together, my friend Celine and I won't go into all of it. It was just a misunderstanding. And it required her to have the courage to bring up to me that, hey, I don't feel comfortable with something. I want to talk about this, in order for there not to be this weird dynamic within our relationship, right? I feel like we can have these friendships and relationships, and they're great, right? You meet someone, but maybe 6 months in, something's going to happen where maybe you disagree on something, or you have a bit of conflict, which is normal and healthy. But it takes courage to unpack that and to bring that up. And for her to have the courage to do that, to show the value of our relationship, and the, right, like the willingness to be like, I want to sit in this uncomfort and talk about this and unpack this and express how I feel. To me, I think in those moments is when it takes the most amount of courage. So yeah.
And it also communicates value, like I think you touched on that.
Yeah.
That you are so valuable that I'm willing to go through an uncomfortable conversation or an uncomfortable season with you in order to kind of find some form of reconciliation or redemption if someone's wronged the other person.
Yeah.
And I think that, because it's so easy just to cut someone off and say, all right then, didn't work out. Reminds me, I don't know if you ever watched the show Friends, but I think Chandler and Monica, have you ever watched it?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay, all right, just checking. But Chandler and Monica, they have their first fight, and Chandler's like, okay, yeah, that's it, it's over. And Monica's like, what? If you didn't ever talk things through, you'd never be in a relationship for longer than. And then she goes, oh, that's why you don't have relationships. But yeah, that's really good. And I think it's so important and resonates with all of us. To have that vulnerability, courage, and I guess humility to have those conversations.
Without going too like into it, but
Yes, turn into a gossip show now. Okay,
no,
what
no,
happened? What did she
no,
say? No,
no,
I'm
not
kidding.
necessarily that. No, sorry, I mean like more open a whole other can of worms. But
Right.
you'd mentioned like love languages earlier, but there's like attachment theory. Are you familiar
Yes.
with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I am definitely more of an
I was going to
avoidant.
pull out a book, but I can't
Oh,
get to
is
it.
it attached?
Attached,
Yes,
yeah,
is amazing.
it's so good.
It's to be honest, that has probably been one of the biggest things I've had to overcome again. And
Do you know
like,
what? Just for anyone watching,
yeah,
I'm gonna make the effort of pulling the book out
you should.
um, because I think we're both recommending it. So there it is.
Hmm.
Go and get this book, guys.
Yeah,
Read it. It'll change
yeah.
your life.
It's been the like I said in regards to I was talking about my parents' divorce and then me realizing the implications it had as I got into romantic relationships. I am and also, but it's played out into all other areas of my life. I was talking about my friend Celine. My avoidantness showed up within our friendship and our relationship, and now I also see it showing up in my business, like my work relationships as well. And so it's just the thing that I keep having to overcome. And so to me, as an avoidant, having difficult conversations, having conflict for me, it's very challenging for me. And so when I think of courage, like those are often the moments for me. It's not like these necessarily big moves and things like that, or quitting the job or ending the relationship. Those things are so hard. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, that's usually what I think of in regards to like courage. Yeah.
No, brilliant. It's beautiful, and I
Hmm.
think it's interesting because we come from opposite spectrums there.
Hmm.
And then, for me, it's really easy. Not easy in terms of having the conversation, but there's a desire within me that wants to sort it out and fix it and,
Mm.
and work it out and things like that. So you end up becoming the person who runs towards, and the avoidant ends up being the person who runs away.
Yep.
And both of them are based on a similar feeling of overwhelmedness, right? And
Mm.
it's how we process those overwhelming emotions. But what I love about attached and the whole attachment theory thing is, unlike other personality tests, this is something that you can actually work on and get towards a more secure attachment. And I think that's really liberating to have that sense of, okay, I can work on this and I can start moving towards an attachment style that is within my grasp, with some work, with some therapy, with some help, whatever.
Yeah.
But and that's really freeing. I think labels can be a little bit dangerous, whereas with the attached stuff, it's like, well, these aren't labels. This is just an assessment of where you're at the moment
Hmm.
and where you could, move towards.
Hmm. And it's like so beautiful to have relationships that are able to one reflect those things back to you, right? But then also hold space for you as you said, you process through like, okay, I feel really uncomfortable right now, or I'm prone to avoiding the situation, and having people just sit with you in those moments and share space with you and also hold you accountable, right? Um,
Mm,
like a small thing is my partner and I, we've been together for 5 years, but there was a time about 2 years in where I was just not in a good place and I needed space. And in regards to the attachment theory, like genuinely, that's been something that's had probably the biggest impact on my life. I've just seen
mm,
it in, as I had mentioned, so many different areas of my life. And it was him that, although we weren't officially in a relationship in a romantic sense at that time, he did say to me, and he was like, hey, like, which to me just shows like the beauty of it. He's like, I don't care if we're together or anything like that, but I just really think you need to read this book and look into this. And that was the first time I read it. And although it scared the life out of me, just having vocabulary to how I felt and to be like, oh my God, because I was just navigating these things in my head. And as an avoidant, I don't talk about these things, right? And so to have someone explain it back to me, it was a YouTube video that he had sent me. I just remember sitting in my apartment at the time, just tearing up. I just felt so seen, right? That I'm not
mm.
alone in this. And like, why does this keep
Yes.
happening to me? Why do I have these good things? And then I just poop the bed, like without a better way of saying it. Right. And, yeah, just exploring that was honestly completely changed my life for sure.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, really, really good. So, Emma, are there any individuals who come to mind as catalysts for your growth? I know you mentioned your friend Celine.
Hmm.
Are there, and you kind of shared the experience there, which was, I think, really powerful. Is there anyone else that you'd just like to shout out today on this podcast?
Hmm. I would definitely say my partner as well, Anthony. He keeps me very accountable, maintains the standard of just like who I am as an individual. Yeah.
Cool. Shout out Anthony.
Anthony,
We're
yes.
gonna, and he's got his own platform as well, so we
Yeah.
can stick a link in the description as
Thank
well.
you.
All right, cool. I have another question, but I think we've covered it about your podcast, the motivation behind it. We talked a lot about curiosity, which I think is such a beautiful thing to have innately, but it's something that you can also build as well. I
Hmm.
think for people who aren't curious, it's good to kind of step out your comfort zone, see things from a different perspective. Something that comes to mind, actually, I don't know if you've come across them. I think they're based in LA, and it's called Jubilee. It's
Yes. Yes, I
yeah.
know who you're talking about.
So what really drew me to them is they were having I don't know what to call them, not debates, but they were bringing people from different sides of the spectrum politically, and having them in a room and asking them questions, and then they would answer differently, and then they would then talk about their experiences or what they think, and that could be from liberal people versus well, I don't want to say versus. Let's say people who are more liberal thinking, and then people who are more conservative thinking, then putting them in a room together. People who are anti-abortion, pro-abortion, like there's all these big
Yeah.
sort of topics, and even the conflict that's I don't know when this podcast will go out, so it's difficult to say. But there's a conflict going on in the world at the moment, and so they were bringing people from both sides to have a chat. And what I really loved about that was just having a space where you can articulate yourself, and then also if you and there were people who were quite closed-minded, have a conversation to then go, oh, I never saw it like that.
Hmm.
That's really interesting. I might read up on this a little bit more. Maybe things aren't as black and white as I thought.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that takes a lot of courage for the person, to step out and go, oh wow, I really saw this from a very polarized perspective.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I add
so,
on? I
of
love
course.
it. I think I watching those are like my favorite kind of videos to watch on YouTube. Um, I also view curiosity as almost like I think I had mentioned to this to you maybe the first time we chatted, as a neutral emotion. So in moments where I feel as though my beliefs or my thoughts or my identity is being challenged, right? If I'm learning something new or I'm noticing things changing, it can be jarring. It can be feel as though the earth underneath you is moving, right? And so I have noticed that curiosity has been almost like a tool that I have used to explore myself. Because that's another thing. I think exploring inwards has been one of the craziest, scariest journeys I've been on.
Mm,
And when I'm sitting in maybe these thoughts or emotions or feelings that are uncomfortable at that time, meeting it with curiosity has kind of been the vessel to help me go through it. I
mm,
feel like it's more a neutral experience rather than being so ignited of like, okay, well, I thought this and now I have to think this. And right,
mm.
seems more charged to me. So using it as like
Yeah.
a carrier oil, right, in regards to that, has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, I love the way you that perspective on that as well. It's really good. What advice would you give to people who are struggling with fear? What do you think they should prioritize in terms of self-development?
What's worked for me is um, just validating how you feel and knowing how you feel is normal. It's not wrong. It's not going to hurt you physically. I think just that has been so liberating. Again, just having, whether it was the topic of my avoidance, right? But just having vocabulary as well for the things that you're going through. So if you start exploring that further, it can be scary, for example, and just hearing other people's perspectives and things like that is really validating, and to hear them talk about how they have felt similar ways than you, like sometimes just that is healing in itself. But in regards to like my 2 cents, I genuinely want to bring it back to that book of the quote of like feeling the fear and doing it anyways, right? And just facing it and getting uncomfortable, or sorry, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I just think that has been the biggest tool for me. And yeah, you're almost like facing it head on of being like, okay, I'm uncomfortable, I'm gonna go forward. So yeah.
Yeah. One of my core things was people pleasing,
Mm.
and trying to get over that. And I'm in a point in my life now where when I see that start bubbling up within me, because I've done the work, I can see it. And so I'm like, okay, the best thing I can do is to push in and flood myself of that, flood myself with that. So I'll give you an example. I had to make some difficult decisions just this year, actually. When I say this year, we're in 2023 when we're
Yeah.
recording this. And then a lot of people had a lot of opinions about that, or at least the community that I'm in was in. And I just kept saying to myself, if someone wants to give me a piece of their mind, I won't let that happen forever, but in this time, I will openly welcome it and have a face-to-face conversation for as long as it takes. And so those things have really helped me to kind of go, okay, I'm not people-pleasing, but I am A, curious about what they have to say, and B, I will face it because I own my decisions.
Right.
And in order to make a decision, you've got to go through the process of making a difficult decision. You've got to go through the process and make sure it's the decision that you align with, that instinctively feels right, that works up here and that works here as well, which is in itself a whole journey, right? But then it's meeting objection and then, talking that out. And when I do talk that out, it's not really from a defensive state. It's more of a I'm really curious about why you think what you think. And that's really helped me to kind of move forward with those sorts of things and really lean on my openness to whether or not this decision is good. Does it serve me? Does it serve the people I care about? Does it serve, my value and vision moving forward? And I think within that, it's created a lot of courage to be able to go, okay, like you said, let's go in vulnerable. Be exposed and then take action to move forward, as opposed to sitting there thinking and just going crazy within your mind about what people think and things like that. So those are internal things that I think we all go through, but then it's meeting it by doing the thing. Like you said, Australia, you were excited, but then moving around, you've got to think, okay, I've actually got to face it. Or with the attachment style, to go, okay, I'm quite scared about this, but actually the best thing to do is to actually do it. I don't know if it was Freud, some psychologist, I'll misquote, but the flooding technique is, if you're scared of water, then to jump into water and keep doing it until you're no longer scared.
I love
I've yet to apply that with my fear of heights, but I'm trying.
Mine's cold exposure as well. I'm trying to do that more because I hate the cold.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Feel free to add to anything that I said just there, but I have a question. You said a cold dip in the morning.
Yes.
Earlier on. What's that look like?
So at the moment I live near the sea. I live in a seaside town.
Oh, okay.
The North Sea is freezing. So I do that sometimes. But my partner created a cold dip, but it's very in the summer it doesn't work because it's you can't really control the temperature. So in the winter it gets quite cold. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Cold shower is where I'm at.
I think they're harder than if you physically put yourself into some sort of body of water. I think a cold shower is actually harder.
Okay. Although that brings me a little bit of reassurance.
Yeah. You have no control when you're going in. You're just I'm in it, right? The shower, you got to move around and yeah. Okay. But I love what you said. I also feel as though it's I don't know about you, but I get ideas in my head and they grow bigger and bigger. And then sometimes if you just have the conversation with someone right, I'm not minimizing the examples, but I just mean of facing it is sometimes it disarms it of it wasn't that scary, right? Because otherwise my brain can just go all different directions and make a bunch of different assumptions as well, right?
Yeah, and that can go in different ways. So if you think, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say you think someone thinks really poorly of you because of an action that they made, and then you go and confront them in a way that is with the intention to kind of sort things out. And it turns out it was just a miscommunication or a misunderstanding. They had some stuff going on in their life, and then you go, "Oh, okay, cool, all right, I can see through that. Let's move forward."
Yeah.
But the other thing is, if they do come back and say, "Well, yeah, I think this, that, and the other," if you approach it with curiosity, you can start to go, "Okay, that doesn't align with my life. That doesn't align with my thinking," and actually exposes me to what your root vision or value is. And because we don't align, that's great. So either way, you're more informed about that relationship, or at least that particular topic, and that works in the working world, it works in the personal world as well. But going to have those conversations, I think, are really important.
Definitely. They take courage.
Okay, so are there any key takeaway points? I'm always picturing the person who's listening to the podcast, right? And they're like 5 minutes away from their destination, listening on Spotify, and they're like, "I'm just gonna quickly just skip to the end." What would be the key takeaway points that you would love people to think about as they wrap up?
I would really um, invite people to integrate curiosity into all areas of their life, especially if there is something that they're really struggling with or really scares them. I know fear is something that keeps coming up. Just try it on. Try meeting it with curiosity. I view that as like a hat you're trying on. And then I honestly think even just myself, it was like a reminder. Everything I say is also to myself. I'm never talking from a place of like, this is what you should do. But really just putting yourself in those situations as well of being uncomfortable. Because I also think it's easy sometimes to be in a place where you're comfortable, right? And you're not regularly having that exposure. And so doing the things that take courage, and I don't mean to keep being like, word
No, no.
vomiting, but actively seeking out the experiences that you can have to be uncomfortable. I think that's something I look at my life. I kind of take what's the word? Take stock of my life and kind of think, okay, where am I being uncomfortable? And if I'm not in a spot where I am being uncomfortable, I try to make some changes. And even if there's things you can't really control, there are activities like we mentioned, like cold therapy, like those things you can do those things every day, right? Regardless of the experiences that you're having in your career or your relationships and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. And we see that backed up by science all the time. People going to the gym, the only way you're going to build muscle is by breaking out your comfort zone and killing those muscle tissues so that they can grow back. Um, pregnancy is a great example. Like, as a woman, you're going to be super uncomfortable, right? Beyond uncomfortable. But actually, the end result is so worth it. Especially if you're the answer from God, right?
I'm gonna tell my mom's gonna love that.
She's gonna love it. Brilliant. And then other things as well. And I love you that you mentioned cold therapy because it's a great example of it's something that no one really wants to do.
Yeah.
But everyone reports is so much better once they've done it afterwards. The regulation that it has over your
Yeah.
body and all your kind of is it dopamine levels and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
the studies are insane. It's like, I don't know the exact, but in regards to like, there's a comparison to like cocaine and the amount of dopamine that floods your brain is like it skyrockets the amount of like cocaine, which is like one of the, you know what I mean, like a horrible way to boost your dopamine. I will also say it really helps my anxieties, and like if I'm really struggling mentally, and worrying about a lot of things, I find it's the one thing that really gets me present in my body very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It
Mm-hmm.
activates that sort of survival
Yeah.
mode in you, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. Emma, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really hope we can do this again.
Yes.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
My request is, yes, you work on podcast women's awards.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know when there's a men's one.
Yes.
I'll be like, hey, how's it going? Consider me.
Well, you can attend the event. You're more than welcome. It's just passed, but next year you can attend it as well. Yes.
Where are they? Do they change?
In London?
Location?
Yes. It's in London, but they also live stream it. But I know you are based in London, so
I'm in London.
Yeah.
It's just down the road. Excellent. If people wanted to reach out to you, kind of connect with you, what's the best way they can do that? We can put links in the description and things like
that. The main platform I actually hang out on is Instagram. My handle is by Emma Krebs, like BY Emma Krebs. And then my email is hello@emmakrebs.com if you want to shoot me an email, personal or professional. I'm always up for a chat. So yeah.
Fantastic. So if people did have further, follow-up questions and like that, you're open to them to just contact
100%.
you directly.
I love meeting new people. So yeah.
I can sense that of you. That's great. That's awesome. Okay, well, once again, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I think there's a lot of things that we talked about that I'm going to personally go away and reflect on as well. So thank you for that. I love that different people from different worlds can connect, overlap, learn from each other, and hopefully encourage each other as well. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This is a very long thank you and a long goodbye. But I want to say, if you're listening today and you got something out of this conversation, feel free to reach out. My platform that I'm on mostly is Instagram as well, so you can send me a DM. You can also have a look in the links in the description if you're on YouTube, with links to quite a few of the things that we talked about today, just to make it easy for you guys as well. Any last words, Emma, before I sign off?
I just want to thank you for creating this awesome podcast and creating this space. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So, as always, whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying to get through, I would encourage you to keep moving forward and keep going in courage. I'll see you on the next one. Hey, really hope you enjoyed that episode. I think there were some really good nuggets, gold nuggets of information there. And if any of that resonated with you, do reach out. We mentioned a couple of books in the podcast today. One of them is attached. I'll put links in the description. We didn't mention the Courage Journal, but there is a Courage Journal, okay? We've developed a Courage Journal, so I'll put links into the description for that as well. I think the book that was mentioned was also Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, so definitely check that out. And my personal recommendation on top of those incredible recommendations is also The Miracle Morning. Do check that out as well. All right, well, as always, whatever you're doing, keep moving forward, keep going in courage, and I shall see you on the next one.